Alright, hello everybody, it's Andrew here back with another video. Today we're going to be discussing the potential for a decent severe weather setup next week across portions of the plains, potentially extending into the Mississippi River Valley as well. Here up on the screen right now I have the SPC's Day 5 convective outlook. There's currently a 15% risk out. This is for Thursday night into Friday morning. We have places like Amarillo, Woodward, Liberal, Garden City, Hutchinson, Kansas, Dodge City, Kansas, and Lubbock, Texas, all within this risk. The next day, we have a 15% risk for places like Woodward, Oklahoma, Oklahoma City and Norman, Fort Still, Oklahoma, Wichita Falls, Texas, Lubbock, Texas, Midland, Texas, Abilene, Texas. Now, I do think this risk will probably be extended further to the east, given the latest model trends. It'll probably be extended a little bit something like this, so places like Dallas, Waco, Austin, San Antonio may be included within this over the next couple of days as we have details refined. There is also potential for severe weather on Saturday, but there's a lot of uncertainty on whether or not the instability is going to be limited, how fast the cold front is, how moisture return is going to be looking like on Saturday, so there's no 15% out. Its predictability too low. Let's start off here with the Euro model. So here's kind of our look right now. As we can see here, we're going to have our upcoming system. This is going to be kind of over the Pacific Northwest over here. And we can see it kind of starting to sling in a little bit. And it's going to start to develop over the Rockies and heavily cyclogenesis, kind of right over the Rockies, which classically happens. Late Thursday night, a surface low is going to develop in West Texas and also in Kansas. The surface low in Kansas is going to provide a severe weather threat for areas like northern Texas, the Oklahoma Panhandle, and into Kansas for Thursday night. Threats Thursday night are still uncertain, although wind and hail will probably end up being the main threats. As we transition into Friday, either a line of supercells or a line of thunderstorms is expected to initiate around late afternoon into the early evening. This is going to jumpstart a good severe risk kind of over Oklahoma and this general region. Oklahoma's severe risk will likely exist a little bit earlier in the day as that cold front crashes eastward. So Oklahoma will definitely be linear in Kansas for this day, but portions of southern Oklahoma and western Texas have a chance to go more supercellular, and then probably 6 to 9Z, which is a little bit after midnight on Saturday, we'll start to see things grow upscale and into a pretty nasty squall line as well. Here's 18Z, which is in the afternoon. We have a nasty squall line with a heavily strengthening low pressure system here in central Kansas and a squall line from Iowa all the way down to the Gulf Coast. This is going to race northeastward, bring with it very strong wind gusts, probably severe wind gusts, potential for tornadoes as well. The tornado threat's limited information right now, but we can see this low pressure strengthens 15 millibars in 8 hours, which is very strong. And it strengthens a good 19 millibars in 12 hours in 30 millibars in 18 hours, which is impressive. And then after this, severe weather may quiet down for a little bit. There's been some models suggesting another system kind of coming off the Rockies, but that is uncertain. Now let's zoom into the central U.S. and let's go into the 500 millibar pattern and kind of dive into it, and then we're going to zoom into the central United States. So as we can see here at 500 millibar, we have this big old trough starting to really eject as we get into Thursday. Thursday night is when this trough is going to start to eject across the plains, and I think we'll probably end up with a supercell setup in Kansas, Texas, and Oklahoma, although this is going to be poorly timed with the capping inversion and EML. As we can see here, Friday it starts to really eject as we get into the evening, and it gets really intense as we get into Saturday. This is going to kickstart a severe weather risk probably for the Mississippi River Valley into the southern plains and Gulf Coast region. Really anywhere within this path could really see storms, and then after this the pattern starts to go quiet again. Now let's go to the central United States and kind of stop there. Zoom in, kind of see what we're working with. So at 850 millibars, this is Thursday evening, we have a decent amount of lower level wind shear that's going to be present across the region. Dew points are likely going to be setting up into the upper 60s and upper 50s, lower 60s. Sorry, I was about to say 70s. We can see here our surface cape or mixed layer cape is actually going to be confined mainly to this area where the SPC does have their 15% risk out, which makes sense. We have surface cape there, pretty strong. there. And we can take a sounding in the Texas Panhandle, and we can see the hodograph is very supportive for severe weather. But our limiting factor is the stable layer right at 850 millibars, which will limit the potential for tornadoes, I think. Now, if we take a sounding a little bit further north in Kansas, again, it's still there. We may see a tornado or two at this day, but I'm thinking large hail and damaging wind gusts will likely be the main threat on Thursday, as we can look at soundings here and really tell the large hodographs, the long gated hodographs there, and straight hodographs, which is going to really provide that hail threat, along with drier air in the middle levels, pretty steep lapse rates, and doable thermodynamics for large hail development. Now, as we get into Friday afternoon in Oklahoma, this is where we may see a few storms trying to pop off here. Some severe weather activity will be possible, mainly damaging wind gusts. Can't entirely rule out a tornado in Kansas or northern Oklahoma as well, where the lower level jet is a little bit stronger. Now let's kind of transition here into the south central U.S. sector and kind of watch as this risk evolves in Texas. We see instability values really starting to increase. This instability values is going to go up here and really start to kickstart things. This is a hodograph and a sounding just south of Wichita Falls, and we can see a favorable environment for tornadoes, wind, and hail will exist. As we get toward 3Z, though, the environment right around the Del Rio region really starts to increase right in here. And back in through here, we also have a decent environment out here as well in this north central Texas, so kind of two distinct regions on the Euro. If we take a box sounding in the Del Rio region, we can see a very large hodograph. The problem is a little bit of a surface stable layer right there, a little bit of an inversion, which may be a little bit of trouble for storms to kind of kick off there. As we get further to the west, though, along the dry line, we can see that it gets a lot larger, so that area wouldn't look so good. Central Texas here, overall looks very solid as well. Now, going into more of the synoptic stuff, as you should with the 4-8 range, we can see our vectors are very far to the northeast, on the Euro at least, which would likely induce a squall line due to the fact that your vectors are not perpendicular to the front motion, so any storms that try to form out ahead of the line will likely be eaten up by the squall line. Now, I think the area with the best shot at discrete development right now is generally going to be near Del Rio. Your vectors are more out of the northeast here, with your kind of front motion generally being like that. So you're going to have a more favorable kind of thing for discrete development here, as over here is not going to be as favorable. 850 millibar winds are also quite strong near Del Rio, which is going to really enhance the threat. We have strong moisture values into the lower 70s now near Del Rio. And as we get towards 6Z, we can see this squall line is already starting to take shape as a steep gradient is occurring. And we can see probably the best environment is going to be really right near Del Rio, right there. And we can see the squall line is really starting to take shape with a little bit more isolated variant kind of to the south on the Euro there. We can see our hodographs keep getting larger, and there's a pretty solid area here in west central Texas there. And a lot better of a sounding. We have a little bit of a stable layer, which is pretty common for this time of the day. The hodograph is really going to carry things here. Very large, very elongated, will support tornadoes, maybe even strong tornadoes if this solution would pan out. Very steep lapse rates would also help with the severe development. Now, once we get into a squall line, we have a little bit of a drier air spike at the lower levels, which is going to enhance the threat for damaging winds. Hail is going to be possible within the discrete phase as well. We've solid lapse rates really all ahead of the front, which is going to help out things. As we can see here, the squall line really starts to move eastward, and the instability values start to become limited, which is going to limit things for Saturday, which is why the SPC hasn't pulled out a 15% yet, which is reasonable for them. If we had more instability, we probably would be ending up with a bigger event here. And we can see 0Z in Arkansas looks very solid, but the instability is not there. Now, going over to the GFS, it has the same general thing. We have a system going off the Rockies with Lee Cyclone Genesis, and it strengthens and moves into the Midwest. And then Friday evening into Texas, we have the same general thing happen. That system really starts to eject northeastward. Now, it's not as intense as the Euro solution is with the surface low for the next day for Saturday. So the Saturday solution for the GFS would not be as conducive for severe weather. And also, the GFS is a little bit slower, too. It still would be conducive, but not as conducive. For Friday, would favor more of a discrete mode, and we can see kind of that general pattern starting to pan out. And on the GFS, it's pretty quiet after this, so the GFS and Euro do agree. Now, as we get into Friday here, we can see Storms really start kicking off at 3Z, which is 9 p.m. And we can see pretty strong moisture return, more consistent than the Euro. We have our surface low pressure here, probably a dry line like here or something, and then a cold front back out here. So, and a warm front all the way up in Canada there. So we can see our best chance for more discrete development would probably generally be in there. And if we look at our 500 millibar flow, that's going to be the case again, although on the GFS it's not so favorable for discrete supercell development. You can see though in Oklahoma it's way worse in more northern Texas, so it's not the best. I think we're probably going to be ending up with a pretty big squall, but we'll still have chances for tornadic activity. As we can see, the GFS is very, very good photographs. It's just we're not sure if we're going to get discrete storm development yet. Now, I probably should have went to Thursday before I started looking in depth at Friday. So here's Thursday on the GFS. The GFS is more consistently good with the instability across the area on Thursday, but it has a higher capping inversion and stable area than the Euro did. Generally, looking at the vectors for Thursday, I'm thinking discrete development is very well going to be possible because they're more northeast and your front motion is more eastward, so you're probably going to see that same general thing occur. We have a pool of moisture that's also present along the warm front there, which is going to help enhance things as well. Yeah, pretty similar, pretty good threat for wind and hail on Thursday. As we get into Friday, again, Oklahoma threat will exist early into the day. And then Texas building on later. We can go to the Southern Plains now and kind of see that Texas threat really starts to build in the evening again. It's a little bit further west this time on the GFS rather than east because the Euro is more progressive and there's a bit more of a stable inversion, but you're still going to have a favorable environment for severe weather. Lapse rates are definitely there. You have your 500 millibar wind energy there. It's probably just going to be a big line of storms. Now, here is Saturday, which the GFS has a lot better of instability Saturday, but your vectors are literally just straight north, which is going to induce a squall line, as anything that tries forming ahead of the front will just be moved up northward unless it's like an hour ahead of the squall line. You're not going to really get much ahead of it. As we look into kind of southern Oklahoma for soundings, they're pretty solid for a squall line, so you'll probably get a pretty good squall line with damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes. But your threat for more stronger tornadoes may be a little bit lower. We'll have to really dive into that as we go along here over the next few days and narrowing down the threats a little bit more. But we can see here our instability starts to get more meager as we get in toward the evening time. Our lapse rates, though, throughout the afternoon are pretty solid, which is going to enhance the threat for severe weather as well. Now, going on to a model like the UK Met here, we can see its moisture return is also pretty similar to the other models there, having it strengthen throughout the day. And it has a pretty decent setup for Thursday, kind of along that surface low there. It does not have an inversion, which this would induce a pretty decent tornado event across Kansas, maybe Oklahoma, and maybe into the Texas Panhandle. Here's the Texas Panhandle. Not bad. Now looking into Friday, it looks like the UK Met has a severe event Friday into Oklahoma there. Not the best profiles, definitely some wind gusts and hail threat to that. And then here is Saturday at 0Z Zulu time here. The soundings are already starting to be very favorable across Del Rio, but anywhere else it's a little bit less favorable. As we can see, our conditions are not so great in some other spots. Northern Texas, if we look at the conditions and take a little bit of a box forecast sounding there, it's not so favorable. It's definitely favorable for wind and hail and some tornado threat as well. But we can see here the wind vectors are definitely something like I mentioned earlier. Now, the UK Met would definitely have some shot and maybe discrete development there in that part of Texas again. And we also have stronger moisture return on the UK Met, which does yield a higher threat. As we get towards 60, there is a locally very good environment there in Texas with very solid soundings like that near Del Rio, which is probably going to be the hot spot. And we can see the vectors are decent down there, still not great. We have a higher lower level jet down there as well, which is going to enhance things for severe weather development. We do take a box sounding right on this cusp of the 70-degree dew points. And we can see it's pretty solid. If we take it more locally there, further to the west, it's very solid. You have this elongated hodograph, which is really going to help enhance things. The only problem is, again, that stable layer, because of the partial boundary, the particle down boundary layer decoupling potentially, which leads to lower level lapse rates and not as much 3 cape, but we have higher instability throughout the mid levels. I think hail and wind are definitely solidified threats. The threat for tornadoes is definitely there, so all hazards for Friday is definitely going to be a possibility. As we look into kind of the general pressure, we can see, I think it may be more of a solution like the GFS, or I mean the Euro, as we have that surface though kind of cutting in there already, and we still have our squall going on as well. Still a solid environment for tornadic development as well there on Saturday. Now here's a look at ensembles here. Here's Thursday. We have a pretty good signal for 60-degree dew points there across portions of Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. Here is Friday, and we can see here again the models are really starting to signal the potential for severe weather, especially ensembles. Now, the weird thing is the ensembles are a lot faster than the models themselves, which is interesting because the GEFS has Friday being way further to the east and has Thursday being the main day. Now, the Euro ensemble is a little bit more realistic, having what looks to be a Friday being a little bit further to the west, and yeah, there you go. Some of these ensembles are also putting instability all the way up into Illinois, but not that many of them in like the Midwest region. Most of them have it out toward Texas. We can see a pretty good signal starting to arise though for Friday, for early Friday morning or Thursday evening there. And again, the Euro ensembles are pretty similar to the GFS, except the Euro ensembles are a little bit less uncertain on if we're going to get 60-degree dew points. Now, as we get into Saturday, the ensembles get a lot more uncertain. Some of the members have dew points in the 60s over here and over here. Some of them have them in the 20s and 30s, so we're getting to uncertainties at this point. The trough strength is also an uncertainty as well, which is going to kind of cast doubt into everything. The GFS is more elongated at that point, though the Euro is a little bit stronger, and we can see the Euro has a little bit better moisture return signal. GFS is still there, though.